Hello there, Pam. It's great to see you again. It has been a long time, I must say, or as they say these days, it's been a minute since we are back on our midday musing. Many things have happened in our lives. I'll just share about me a little bit. I have gone through some health challenges in the past a year and a half, and I'm doing well by God's grace. And I'm very excited to come back and do a topic today, which I think you would find very interesting.
Rita, I'm so grateful that you're back in action. I know it's been a minute before we have been doing these podcasts, but I recently came to the Spark Marriage Workshop. And I think one of the feedback that we got was to dive more into this topic we talked about, which is contempt.
It was amazing to see you, and we are super grateful that you and Uman could come and teach us for our workshop. And it was exciting to see. We got so many good feedback from people who came and thought this was such a great talk and that they would love to hear more. And therefore, here we are doing a little podcast on contempt. Did you know that Dr. John Gottman, a leading expert, found that contempt is the #1 predictor of divorce, with a 90% accuracy rate? That's shocking, right?
There's Arthur Brooks, who is a social scientist. He wrote a book about love your enemies, how decent people can save America from the culture of contempt. And so what he found was contempt is actually dividing America. And that is one of the reasons we want to tackle this topic.
Oh, that is what we're going to be talking about today. So, not that we are perfect and that we have it all and we know it all. However, I think this is a topic that being married for years, both of us, I know for myself, has been times I have definitely struggled with it. And I'm glad to have tools now. And I'm glad to be aware now that I can actually go back and change the things when I know I'm struggling with it.
Absolutely. I am also a culprit of contempt, and that's what led me to study this out. So let's start with defining contempt. What exactly is contempt? What do you think?
Well, contempt, they say, is, in simple terms, looking down on the other person with disdain or disrespect, or even that you're better than the other person and communicating it in various ways.
Yes, and I alluded to the social scientist research, and what they found in America is when we listen to one-sided media, it kind of fuels our contempt. Because naturally, when you and I, maybe you might have a difference of opinion, and I've learned to respect your opinion and listen to your opinion. But if I'm coming in with a lot of media that had spoken to me, I shut down the part of my brain that's listening, and I'm listening to you, contemptuous mindset, and we actually don't get connected, and it destroys relationships. And what he's finding is it's destroying the nation. So I think we need to really show how contempt shows up in our lives. So let's talk about some behaviors of contemptuous.
Yeah, it drives love out of our lives, which I believe is the life-giving fuel. Can also be anger and disgust. I'm excited today to be able to look at various ways contempt shows us, because it's possible that many of us are not even aware. I know for me, I wasn't aware many a times, and I had my own explanations and reasons, but I'm glad that we're going to deep dive and take a look at it today.
Yeah.
So would you say some real examples are, does contempt show up?
Yes. Before I share about behavior, I want to talk about what you talked about, that anger. Anger is a natural emotion. When we feel hurt, we get angry. But contempt is when we add disgust to that anger. So anger plus disgust is contempt. So it can start with like rolling, when one person is speaking, the other is rolling their eyes in response. And some of us may not, roll our eyes like we were in school, but in our hearts, we're like, oh boy, we're rolling our eyes. That is a sign that we are actually listening with contempt.
Yeah, and that can happen over a period of time, isn't it? Because contempt doesn't just happen in one day. Then there's, of course, sarcasm. One person makes snide remarks while the other person's habits Example, I know that my husband forgets to take out the trash after I have told him a few times, saying, "Oh, I guess you think we're living in a five-star hotel where we have servants to do the job, or you have maids who can come and help you." So things like that, which is sarcastic, but that is coming out of feelings.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Rita, for that connection from your personal example. Another way is also mocking.
Mm.
If one person says, I feel like you don't listen to me, and the other person goes, I feel like you won't listen to me. Like you're mimicking it. That's actually contemptuous too.
Yeah. Or what about name calling? Derogatory names, saying things like lazy and stupid and useless and jerk and in the other person's character instead of about their specific behavior.
Yeah, yeah. That's so true. And also our facial expressions, that's something that I have to watch. You can like or smirk or again roll my eyes when I don't agree with an opinion or if someone is expressing like a challenging emotion, uh, just not being willing to listen.
Yeah, I'm smiling because I know I've done that. Known for expressions, but I believe another way contempt shows up is when we someone else's character. We to it earlier. It's not just the behavior we're talking about, but we are actually making that person the whole thing, like so self, or I feel so hurt because you don't consider my feelings. That could be a form of contempt as well, right?
Yes, yes, absolutely. Another one is public humiliation. That's a big one. Trained educators and sometimes teachers can think that they're trying to help the whole class by belittling one or ridiculing a student in front of other people or making jokes about them at their expense. It could also like sharing embarrassing stories. One of the things I was convicted about is sharing embarrassing stories about my children without their consent. And it's super convicting to realize that that's a form of contempt.
Guilty as charged. And talking about that someone else's character. We to it earlier. It's not just the behavior we're talking about, but we are actually making that person the whole thing, like so self, or I feel so hurt because you dismissive gestures, using hand gestures or turning away a person's talking to you or showing a lack of interest or respect for what they have to say is another form that we can exhibit contempt in our lives. And because you have done that and you practiced it at different times, things like making remarks that implies that the other person is less intelligent or capable. And I know I've done it so many times, like things like, I don't know why I even bother explaining this to you. You don't even get it. Oh, you never get it. Not understanding how harmful that can be, right?
Yeah.
Not even thinking about it.
Yes, yes. I hope we know how contempt shows up and I'm sure there are other ways, but I want to transition and talk about the root causes of contempt. Where is this contempt coming from? And one of the first things is contempt comes from unresolved conflicts when we don't address issues head on. So that's a skill we need to learn. How do we talk about issues and conflicts and address them rather than festering them? Because it turns into resentment and then it leads to contemptuous behavior.
Yeah, it's a big one. Your emotional or your physical needs aren't being met. Easy then to start looking down on the other person, blaming the other person for your unhappiness. I know it happens a lot in relationship between and children. It can happen in relationship between, and wife or some other deep relationships where we expect the other person we hold the other person responsible for our happiness.
Yes. Another reason for contempt is personal insecurities. For me, I had to work on my own insecurities and not project it on the other person. And because then when you have insecurity, you can see other people's actions through our own self-doubt and fear. And so that could be a reason why contempt is growing.
And I was mentioning earlier about our past experience in our behavior, especially our child experiences. We all have a history and our own story. We have in our brains, it's imprinted. And if we experience neglect or criticism or betrayal before, we'll carry these wounds in our relationships, even current ones. to behaviors like this. And many a times we don't know that we are a product of our past. And so I guess when you say root causes, it's a good idea to take a look at where is it coming from.
Yes, so important because our body keeps a score and we might be holding a lot of pain and we might need that eye check because we're viewing the world through this contemptuous lens rather than a healing lens, rather than the lens of forgiveness and empathy. So let's transition into how do we heal and move to. Yes, so important because our body keeps a score and we might be holding a lot of pain and we might need that eye check because we're viewing a more respectful and loving relationship, because the opposite of contempt is respect. So let's transform contempt into respect. So the first step is, like, talk about awareness. Both of us just discussed different ways that we've been showing contemptuous behaviors in our actions. So for me, growing in that awareness, when it comes out of my mouth or my face or my eyes, it's really helped me to kind of check on it and take a step back.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm so grateful we get to talk about this because I know that I have been forgiven and I've received a lot of forgiveness in my life, behaviors like this. And I'm sure that I have extended the same to others. But it's really good for us start somewhere, right? Maybe many of us are thinking, well, I can relate to that, or I'm like that, but I don't know, it's too late now, or whatever we think in our minds. I would say we can start off by, let's say, using respectful language in our communication. As a first step, placing sarcasm in using constructive communication. I know it may seem a lot, but we could start somewhere. And as you mentioned earlier, Pam, that the antidote opposite of contempt is respect, of course, coupled with humility and love and all that kind of stuff. But sometimes you don't actually feel all those things, but we can still be respectful. So starting off that way, expressing respect and appreciation will, I think, be a good point to start.
Yeah, this is difficult and it might seem like, all right, you just tell me to respect. I don't feel any respect, or that person has to earn respect. Part of it is also recognizing our bodies. Mentioned our body keeps a score. So it's helpful to understand that contempt is a habit. Just like you have bad habits, it's just a reactive way that we respond to those things that we haven't dealt with. So it's important to understand how our brain works. So there's the empathetic part of our brain shows up and works when we see someone like us in pain. Maybe our children or our husband or someone we care about is in pain. We feel empathy and it's easier to show respect. But what happens when it shows up and works when we see someone like us? We are sitting and being with people that are just like us, or watching social media or television or news that's one-sided. What research has shown is when we see people who are different or we don't know them that well, the empathetic part of our brain does not light up. So we don't feel respect or we don't feel empathy. So the antidote to contempt is respect. But for us to develop respect, we also need to work on ourselves. And that's where that coaching and that connecting comes. If we are sitting and being with people that are just like us, or watching social media or television, because it's not easy.
Yes. And I'm so glad that and I talk to you regularly, and I have other friends who can point out these things, because we all need people in our lives who will love us enough to be able to point out we are wrong, or when we should be open to it, so that I believe input is good for us. And I'm glad, we get to do this podcast together and share this message with the world. So to do a recap, we defined what contempt was, and we discussed how it shows up in some of its root causes and shared ways that we can transform it. Now, I know it's a small step. You take that first step. It may be a long road, but making that tiny little step or that one small decision to work on it, I believe, will lead us towards getting out of this habit of contemptuous, because not only does it hurt the others, but it also hurts us. We carry contempt in our hearts.
Yeah, so true, Rita. I want to extend an offer to our audience. We've the result of the workshop, and there's been a high demand for follow-up. So we actually have a Facebook group called Reignite the Spark, and you're welcome to join, where we're going to put in a little bit more resources for those who have attended the workshop. But if you're interested, reach out to us, like this post, and let's destroy the silent killer of relationships. from our lives by supporting one another and just growing in respect and love for one another.
Thank you for tuning into Midday Musing. If you found this episode helpful, please do subscribe, share it with other people who might benefit from it. And remember, prioritizing love and respect in your relationship is the key to lasting happiness. So until next time, bye-bye now.